In a small and poor village, people had been struggling with hunger and poverty for many days. Among them lived a 10-year-old boy named Elias. Every morning, Elias walked through the dusty village streets, searching for food for his family. But that day, after hours of searching, he found nothing. All he had in his hands was an empty basket. With sadness in his eyes, Elias returned home. Inside their tiny stone house, his mother Miriam was sitting beside her young son Daniel. Daniel had been sick for several days. Miriam looked exhausted. She had no food left to give her children. She looked toward the sky, folded her hands, and whispered, "Dear Lord, please don't let my children go hungry. If you can hear my prayer, please help us." A few moments later, Elias entered the house with his empty basket. He saw the tears in his mother's eyes. There was only one small piece of bread left in the entire house. 3 people, and only one small piece of bread. Elias looked at the bread for a moment. He was hungry too, but then he looked at his sick little brother. Without saying anything, Elias picked up the bread and gave it to Daniel. "Mom, I'm not hungry. Please give it to Daniel." Miriam looked at her son with tears in her eyes. At that very moment, a stranger was walking slowly through the dusty village road. His name was Jesus. Jesus noticed Elias standing outside the house. He saw the sadness in the boy's eyes. He walked toward him, knelt down, and gently asked, "My child, why are you so sad?" Elias tried to hold back his tears. Then he finally said, "My mother and my little brother are hungry. My brother is sick, but I have nothing to give them." Jesus looked at the boy with compassion. He gently placed his hand on Elias's shoulder and said, "Take me to your home." Elias slowly walked beside Jesus and led him to the small stone house. When they entered, Jesus saw Miriam sitting beside Daniel. Daniel was lying weakly on a simple bed. There were empty bowls on the table. Miriam looked at the stranger with confusion. Jesus looked at her and calmly said, "Do not be afraid. Your prayer has been heard." Then Jesus opened a simple cloth bag. Inside were fresh bread, fruits, dates, and grain. Miriam could hardly believe what she was seeing. Tears began to roll down her face. She looked at Jesus and said, "I only prayed for help. I never thought help would come so quickly." Jesus smiled gently. Then he sat beside Daniel and gave him some clean water. Daniel slowly opened his eyes and looked at Jesus. For the first time in many days, a small smile appeared on his face. Miriam saw her son smiling again, her heart filled with hope. Jesus then turned toward Elias. He placed his hand gently on the boy's shoulder and said, "My child, always remember this. Even if you have very little, you can still share something with someone who has less." Elias listened carefully. He finally understood that true wealth was not about how much a person owned. True wealth was having a heart willing to help others. After some time, Jesus quietly walked out of the little house. Miriam and her children stood at the doorway and watched him leave. But Elias suddenly ran after him. "Wait!" Jesus turned around. Elias looked at him with tears in his eyes and asked, "Who are you?" Jesus smiled peacefully and said, "I am the one who heard your mother's prayer." Elias's eyes filled with tears. He ran toward Jesus and hugged him tightly. Jesus gently embraced the little boy. For a moment, everything around them became silent. Then Jesus continued walking down the dusty road. He slowly disappeared into the warm, golden sunset. But even after Jesus left the village, his kindness remained behind. The next morning, something had changed. The village looked different. People who once kept everything for themselves began helping one another. One person shared bread, another gave water. Someone helped an elderly neighbor, and Elias remembered the lesson Jesus had taught him. He took a piece of his own bread and gave it to another hungry child. That small act of kindness touched the hearts of the people around him. Soon, others began doing the same. A single act of kindness had started something beautiful. The entire village began to change. And Elias finally understood something he would never forget. Sometimes God does not help us by sending a miracle from the sky. Sometimes he answers a prayer by putting compassion into the heart of another person. So, if you have even a little, share it with someone who needs it. Because one small act of kindness can change someone's entire life. And sometimes, the person who needs your help today may be the answer to someone else's prayer tomorrow.